And I'll call this fourth regular session to order. Please all rise for a moment of silence. Clerk, please call the roll.
Mr. Speaker,
Present.
Representative Bavata,
Present.
Representative Benavente, Representative Blanco, Representative Borja, Representative Camacho, Representative Castro, Representative Julian Guerrero, Representative Flores, Representative Guerrero, Representative Vitabus,
Ilo.
Representative Zama,
Present.
Representative Manglonia,
Present.
Representative Maritita, Representative Peter,
Here.
Representative Probes, Representative Cristina Sablan,
Present.
Representative John Paul Sablan,
Mr. Gap.
Representative Villagomez,
Present.
Representative Yumo. Mr. Speaker, all 20 members are present.
Thank you, Clerk. With all 20 members present, constitutes a quorum to proceed with today's session. Thank you again, Clerk. Now we're down to public comments. The podium's open for any member in the gallery to state a comment. Please state your name for the record and whether you represent yourself or a specific company or government agency.
Hi, my name is Ashley Cost. I represent the Office of the Public Auditor. We're here to support this bill for the amending the election law because of complications with COVID-19 this year. I'm here for questions if you guys have any, so feel free to let me know. Okay.
Thank you, Ms. Cost. Podium's still open.
Hafaday and good afternoon. My name is Maxine Laszlo. I am the Executive Director of the Saipan Chamber of Commerce, and I'm here on behalf of President Velma Palacios to make comment for a bill that is for action from the Senate on your calendar. It is HB 2170. SS1 to provide for an imposition of certain fees upon money transmission transactions completed by financial institutions for a person and for other purposes. We have been working alongside Chairman Ivan Blanco. We submitted our comments to the Ways and Means Committee, but I did want to go ahead and reiterate that the Chamber opposes this bill. It essentially, from speaking with some of our legal members, it's very unclear about whether or not this bill is meant to be specifically for a remittance tax, or if it is just going to go ahead and tax all local wire transfers. And we have concerns either way of how that would go. Because the way that the bill reads right now, it reads as though it would be a tax on all wire transfers happening at our local banks. So we do oppose this bill, and we look forward to continuing to have dialogue. If I could take off my chamber hat and go ahead and just speak from public comment of Maxine Laszlo. I am a resident of Coplerville. I just want to go ahead and empathize that I believe that the legislature has been tasked with trying to find ways to make money for the Commonwealth, because that is something that unfortunately has come, and we look to our representatives to find a way to make government operations happen. But unfortunately, I do think that often it's very piecemealed, and it comes from an idea and a certain tax here and a certain there isn't really a strategic plan. And I would just go ahead, and if it could behoove the legislature, and I know, Speaker, you were a part of the conversations that happened at the fiscal summit. I think that there were a lot of great conversations that came out from the private sector, from the legislator, that the public representatives were able to speak over those 6 very long days, if for those who were able to participate. I know that this was specifically touched upon at the fiscal summit, but it wasn't decided upon. And I know that there are other bills that are coming from both the House and from the Senate that weren't a part of those discussions. I would just ask that as the House and the Senate continues to come up with ways to make money for all of our community, for the best of the public, to look back at those conversations and maybe start from there, because there was a lot of good dialogue that happened amongst all of those parties. And so that would just be my public comment. Thank you all so much.
Thank you, Ms. Maxine. Podium still open?
Half a day. My name is Kayla Igatol. I'm the administrative officer at the Commonwealth Election Commission, and we are in support of Senate Bill 2168. And we're here if you have any comments as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Iguito. Podium still open. Ready? Next on the order of business, we have adoption of journals. We have none. And our introduction of bills, I recognize Representative Marco Peter, please.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Here introducing House Bill number 21126 to establish the crime of excessive speeding and for other purposes. We know for sure that a lot of the speeding infractions, 100% of the infractions go to the judicial branch just to satisfy their obligations with the loans, right? So with this also, not only for the safety, but also just is going to create a new revenue generating avenue for the Department of Public Safety. So looking for other co-authors. Feel free to jump in. Thank you.
Thank you, Rep. Peter. House Bill 21126 will be referred to JGO. We have none under local bills. We have none under initiatives, none under resolutions. Messages from the governor. Clerk, please.
Mr. Speaker, under messages from the governor, there's only one item, Governor's Communication 21-158.
Thank you, Clerk. Discussion under Governor's communication. Ready? There's Senate communication. I recognize the floor leader, please.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Under item 7, Senate Communications, we have several. And as agreed upon in our leadership meeting, we will still remain Senate Communication 21-78 and Senate Communication 21-98 on the agenda. And I will now make a motion that we accept Senate Communications 21-105 all the way to Senate Communications 21-112. So moved.
Thank you, floor leader. Motion has been placed by our floor leader to accept Senate communication. It has been seconded. Discussion on that motion.
Ready.
Ready? All those in favor, please say aye. Those opposed, please say nay. Motion carries. I recognize the floor leader for the proper motions on those two specific legislations, please.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And before I make that motion, I want to make a motion that we suspend Rule 9, Section 8, referrals of bills and resolutions, so that we can place both Senate Bill 21-111 and Senate Communication 21-112. So move.
Motion has been presented for the suspension of specific rules by our floor leader and has been seconded. Discussion on that motion. Ready? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, please say nay. Motion carries. Floor leader, please.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. At this time, I make a motion that we place Senate Communication 21-11, transmitting for House action on Senate Bill number 21-67, Senate Draft 1, entitled to allow a member of the Commonwealth Election Commission to appear, attend, participate, and vote in an official meeting using a telephone, video, or other electronic means. I move for its placement into the Bill's calendar. So moved.
Second.
Thank you, floor leader. Motion has been placed by our floor leader to place Senate Communication 21-111, referring to Senate Bill number 2167 SD1 on today's calendar for action and has been seconded. Discussion on that motion.
Ready.
Ready? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, please say nay. Motion carries. Senate Communication 21-111 is hereby placed on today's calendar for action. Floor leader, please.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Last on item 7 is Senate Communication 21-112, transmitting for House action Senate Bill number 21-68, Senate Draft 2, entitled to suspend certain Sinamay election laws for the Sinamay 2020 general election to mitigate the public health risks due to the COVID-19 pandemic, to extend early voting time to 21 days, and add more polling places, to extend our hours of operations for early voting and election day, to authorize curbside voting and procedures, to authorize the CEC to collect absentee ballots 7 days before the general election, to give the CEC flexibility to make changes to the election procedures if necessary, to mitigate the public health risks due to the COVID-19 pandemic and for other purposes. I move for its placement on today's bill calendar. So moved.
Thank you, Floor Leader. Motion has been placed by our Floor Leader to place Senate Communication 21-112 and referring to Senate Bill number 21-68 SD2 to bill calendar for action today. Discussion on that motion.
Ready.
Ready? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, please say nay. Motion carries. Thank you, members. That takes care of our Senate communication. Any referrals of any communications from the Senate will be put on a later date. House Communications, clerk, please.
Mr. Speaker, under item 8, House Communications, we have 3 items, House Communication 21-144, 145, and 146, all referrals.
Thank you, clerk. Discussion on House Communications. Ready? We have none from the judicial branch, departments and agencies. Clerk, please.
Mr. Speaker, under item 10, Communications from Departments and Agencies, we have 2 items, Department and Agency Communication 21-60 and 21-61.
Thank you, clerk. Discussion on communication from departments and agencies. Okay, just for note, Department Agency Communication number 21-60 will be referred to the Committee on Natural Resources. Thank you again, members and clerk. Under miscellaneous communications, clerk, please.
Mr. Speaker, under item 11, Miscellaneous Communication, we have Miscellaneous Communication 21-96 through 21-100.
Thank you, clerk. Discussions under miscellaneous communication. None? Thank you, members. We have no...
Sorry, Mr. Speaker.
Oh, Reptina Sablan, please.
Sorry. Thank you. Just on miscellaneous communication 2197, we did at the last Ways and Means meeting, and I think our chairman could also perhaps add to this. We did discuss the concerns that were raised by the Medicaid office to the Senate as they deliberate on the budget bill for 2021, and the request was made to call in Medicaid and really. Regarding this letter and the concerns that they have raised about the CNMI being at risk of losing out on millions in Medicaid funds if we do not identify additional CNMI funding to cover particularly the administrative costs and the costs associated with developing a fraud detection and prevention system. But I think it would be really helpful, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Speaker, to just follow up on that, bring in Medicaid, have them answer questions of the members. It does appear that this may have been an oversight in the House, on the governor's part as well, but also as we deliberated on the House budget. And so I think just so that we are prepared, we're ready when if the Senate does get to us their budget version, we should be sure that we take care of Medicaid. Thank you.
Thank you, Reptina Sablan. And on that note also, we're working on a bill with the Chairman on Health on specific legislation in regards to Medicaid. So with that, Chairman Itibus will follow up on that legislation. Any further discussion under miscellaneous communications? None? Thank you, members. We have no reports of standing committee, nor reports from special and conference committee, none under unfinished business. We have none under resolution calendar. Under bill calendar, I recognize the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Under bill calendar, we have 2 for today's action. But before we act on both legislation, I make motion that we suspend Rule 7, Section 9, Committee Reports and Other Documents, and Rule 9, Sections 9 and 10 for first and final reading. So move.
Thank you, floor leader. Motion has been placed by our floor leader to suspend specific pertinent rules to act on legislation has been seconded. Discussion on that motion. Ready? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, please say nay. Motion carries. Floor leader, please.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I now make a motion that we pass Senate Bill number 21-67, Senate Draft 1, a bill for an act to allow a member of the Commonwealth Election Commission to appear, attend, participate, and vote in an official meeting using a telephone, video, and other electronic means. So move.
A motion has been placed for passage by floor leader on Senate Bill number 21-67 SD1 and has been seconded. Discussion on that motion.
Ready.
Ready? Colleagues, just to take note on this specific legislation, that we make sure that the intent is, and it's discussed this afternoon, that 21-67 SD1 is for communications and meetings that will be within the CINAMAYA, so that nobody travels or somebody gets appointed from another jurisdiction and start making meetings over here. So just for the intent of this legislation, it's discussed in this session that this bill will address that these meetings will allow the members that are residing in the CINAMAYA and are in the CINAMAYA to conduct these meetings. With that being said, clerk, for the roll, please.
Representative Babalta,
Yes.
Representative Benavente,
Good.
Representative Blanco,
Yes.
Representative Borja, Representative Camacho,
Yes.
Representative Castro,
Good.
Representative De Leon Guerrero,
Good.
Representative Flores,
Yes.
Representative Guerrero,
Good.
Representative Vitabos,
Elwar.
Representative Lizama,
Yes.
Representative Mangolonia,
Yes.
Representative Meritita, Representative Peter,
Good.
Representative Probes, Representative Cristina Sablan,
Yes.
Representative John Paul Sablan,
Gan.
Representative Villagomez,
Yes.
Representative Yumo. Mr. Speaker,
Yes.
Mr. Speaker, all 20 members voted yes.
Thank you, clerk. With all 20 members voting yes, Senate Bill number 21-67 SD1 hereby passes the House. Thank you again, members. Floor leader, please.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And last on our bill calendar, and before that motion, I make a motion first that we suspend Rule 7, Section 9, Committee Reports and Other Documents, and Rule 9 and Section 10, first and final reading. So move.
Thank you, floor leader. A motion for suspension of specific pertinent rules has been placed by our floor leader and has been seconded. Discussion on that motion. Ready? All those in favor, please say aye. Those opposed, please say nay. Motion carries. Floor leader, please.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Last on our bill calendar is Senate Bill number 21-68, Senate Draft 2, a bill for an act to suspend certain CINAMAYA election laws for the CINAMAYA 2020 general election to mitigate the public health risks due to the COVID-19 pandemic, to extend the early voting time to 21 days and add more polling places, to extend the hours of operations for early voting and on election day, to authorize curbside voting and procedures, to authorize the CEC to collect absentee ballots 7 days before the general election, to give the CEC flexibility to make changes to the election procedures if necessary to mitigate the public health risk due to COVID-19 pandemic and for other purposes. I move for its passage.
Thank you, floor leader. A motion has been placed for the passage of Senate Bill number 21-68 SD2 by floor leader and has been seconded. Discussion on that motion. Rep. Tina Sablan, please.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and colleagues. I'd like to offer a House substitute bill to incorporate some of the changes that were requested and drafted with the assistance of both the Office of the Public Auditor, the Attorney General's Office, and their legal counsel assigned to the Election Commission. We worked on these amendments, well, really starting over the weekend after we got the Senate bill, and then finalized those amendments today, and that's in the House substitute that you should have before you. And we can go over what those amendments are when we're ready.
Please do. This will be the rightful time to do that. Members, everybody got a copy that had been shared by Rep. Tina Sablan. And Rep. Tina, can you just go by section by section? Sure. And the title, members, also, if the members have any further concerns, we can go into committee of the whole since we have Election Commission here and OPA, should we have any further questions to them.
Okay.
Please proceed, Rep. Tina Sablan.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So
Rep.
beginning
Sorry,
on...
Rep. Lipon, did you raise your hand?
Is Mr. Speaker, you mentioned committee as a whole after her overview of this substitution.
Should we have any further questions to CEC or
I
OPA?
have some questions to CEC and OPA.
Okay.
if
Do you,
that's the case.
members, do you guys want to go to committee of the whole first before we proceed with the substitute?
Sure.
No? Floor leader, please.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And with no objections from the members, I now make a motion that we fall into the committee as a whole so that we can afford CEC and the Office of Public Auditor's Office for questions and answers. So move.
Second.
A motion has been placed by our floor leader to break into a committee of the whole and has been seconded. Discussion on that motion. Ready? All those in favor, please say aye. Those opposed, please say nay. Motion carries. We're now in the committee of the whole. I invite OPA, CEC, and AG to please proceed up to the Sarge. Can we assist the and we'll hand the floor over to our floor leader, and he'll begin the process. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Welcome, Ashley from OPA and members of the CEC, Director, and your legal counsel. And at this time, I open up for questions and answers. Any members wishes to ask questions? At this time, I recognize Representative Lipon.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, Floor Leader. I just have some questions to probably maybe OPA can clarify this to me. I noticed on page 6, line 19, it says B, an absentee ballot may be rejected if it listed a number of criteria. And one of my concern here is we do understand, Mr. Speaker, that the mail system, when you mail something, it looks nice. When you receive it at UN, it looks like it's been mutilated to the point. And on line 6, number 4, they say the seal appears to have been tampered with. How do we know that the seal was tampered when the postal system itself had mutilated the package? So how does one determine how is it tampered? Is it there's forensic that exists to show that? That's one. The second one is on line 11. The ballot has been received after the deadline. I do understand that 14 days, but with this COVID pandemic, how does one determine that after, if I mail my ballot on November 3rd, US, and it gets here beyond the 14 days, it would not be counted? Do we CECC inform the voter that his ballot or her ballot is not counted because it's beyond the 14-day timeline? I want some clarity because a lot of voters of Island are complaining that they send their ballot, but the numbers that were rejected or failed to vote is tremendous. So how does one determine if it's the commissioners that certify that it's invalid? Do they notify the voters since they have the affidavit? I think it's proper that they notify those voters because in fairness for those individuals that they did diligently send off their ballot must be accorded some sort of information because they had exercised their fiduciary responsibility to vote. So we must ask CACC to notify those voters and the reasons behind it. So I hope that they can shed some light to this. That's all, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Representative Lipon. I think those are two questions, and Ashley, did you want to go first with, or Director would want to go first? Please proceed, Director Gomez.
Well, with the situation right now, what we can do is go ahead and notify the voters that they failed to, we didn't receive their ballot on time after the 14 days. But in the previous elections, we don't notify them because we counted the ballots on election day.
Thank you, Director Villagomez. Ashley, did you want to chime in?
Sure. Just to more clearly answer your question. So, with things being tampered with, so essentially what this bill is taking out what the language already is out of one CMC 6213. What we're, when we're looking at ballot rejection, so we just copied it from what the original law is. The only difference would be that normally in the situation that you'd have the 5 commissioners and they would all look at that and then they would make that determination together, whereas because essentially what the ballot or what it looks like is with absentee ballots, there's the initial outside envelope, and then it has their affidavit and form, and then it has another sealed envelope inside with the ballot. So it would be the outside one, which is we'd be most concerned about. And then, yeah, in the past, that's what's happened is that the 5 commissioners would, collectively make a decision, and then if they agreed, then they would initial it. What we're changing for this election, just this one, is that you would have 2 designees from the commission and then someone from OPA observing, and then we're doing that to kind of speed up the process because normally on election day, if they can't get through processing those ballots until after the polls close, then we're really behind, and that's why a lot of times it goes into the night. So that's the changes that that we're making in this, if that answers the question.
So technically, on this, the number 4, it's had to do with the CEC regulation, right, Ashley?
The previous the previous CEC law.
Okay, so in the sense, because this we're making some changes. I know it's a sunset provision, Mr. Speaker, but we want to accord all the voters that are away from here in the Sinamay. For as much as we want to have this election move forward smoothly, we need to be mindful of those voters in the state side, and they can be accorded. The last question that I would want to ask is on page 9, line 4. It says if there's more than one person in a vehicle for curbside voting, all person 18 years old or older must exit the vehicle to allow for voting privacy. I do understand the intent here is to make sure that there's no fraud or there's no tainting on the vote, but what if the voter wants that person in the car? How does one address this? If we want that individual to vote and they refuse, that's one vote less to be counted. And I'm only alluding to exercising your fiduciary responsibility, because I'm a true believer that if you vote, you have every right to voice your concern about the government. But if you don't vote, I don't think that you should be very vocal out there in the community. We need people to vote, and that's very important. And I want everyone to understand that they have to come out and exercise their fiduciary responsibility as a voter on this Commonwealth. So my concern is, what if the individual, an old, an elder says, I don't want this person out, I need guidance, and it's a family member. How do we deal with this? Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield for this time.
The way we would deal with the curbside voter and an individual that did not want to exit the vehicle, or the voter wanted that individual to be in the car, that would not be accepted, because that's the same thing in person voting. It's only the poll workers that assist the voter, likewise with an individual that comes to vote curbside.
You still have the floor, Chairman Lipon.
I agree with that, but there's a difference with curbside, especially if the individual is incapacitated, can't walk. How do you bring somebody in there if they don't want to go in there into the polling place? So that's why this is just some sort of accommodation for this time. We have to be mindful now, Mr. Speaker, because of this COVID pandemic. A lot of these old timers will probably just do curbside voting. How do we deal with this? I want assurance from CAC that this is going to be addressed properly. How do you tell an old timer, I'm sorry, this is the law is this? In all probability, that old timer would just say, let's go, bring me home. And that's one, individual that must vote to exercise their fiduciary responsibility as a citizen of the Commonwealth of Northern Marianas Island.
Please proceed if you wanted to respond.
Well, with the curbside voting, that's for the voter. We're not telling them to get down, the voter, if they're disabled or they just don't feel comfortable, get down. But it's the people that are accompanying them that will need to exit the vehicle, because that voter has the right to cast their ballots secretly.
But what if that voter insists that the person remains in the car? That's my concern. How do you address that? I know that you have CEC can refuse that individual to vote, but what if that voter? I'm alluding to the elders here, because that's going to be the common issue that we're going to have.
Those are sorry, Rep, but those are issues we faced in previous elections, and we dealt with, and we come to a point where we make the voter feel comfortable with having us assist them, or the poll worker assist them, so they eventually do give in and have their family member exit the vehicle.
I'll yield for the sun, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Representative Lipon. Next would be, I recognize Chairman LJ Castro.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Madam Director, and to the staff from CEC and OPE. Thank you for allowing us this time to clear up any concerns we may have to the bill at hand. For the most part, after getting a chance to read the legislation, I don't see any issues. I don't see too many issues that I have concern with, other than to just clarify them to constituents, just in case there's any confusion. I know that this came through a good amount of deliberation and brainstorming to put it together. My only concern is in regards to Section 6, which is in regards to the election itself. Now, I'm looking at page 9, line 25 to line 29, where it indicates that in the event of a surge of positive cases or other health and safety predicaments caused by the pandemic, the Commission will be authorized to change the procedure set forth in this Act. I know just recently you established new members as part of the Commission, and they've been holding meetings. I just wanted to see, just in the event of planning for the election itself, if there have already been procedures that either the agency or the commission itself has deliberated into implementing in the event that item B of section 6 ends up going into effect. Because I know that, we had one community case not too long ago. I know for the most part, the cases that have been coming that have been here, the common of have been to transit. So in the event that there's a surge of positive cases, have the commission brainstormed in regards to any procedures that they might change in regards to safeguarding the health of the voters on election day?
We have, and we're actually working closely with Warren Villagomez, the chairman of the COVID task force. But, we hope that we don't need to go to Plan B, in the event that there is a surge. But we do have plans, and the board and the staff and the director are working on with the chairman of the COVID task force.
That's foreseen. Okay. Thank you very much for that, Ms. Higuito. And I know that in regards to this bill, I know that election day, even if it's early voting or the day itself, it still attracts a sizable crowd that comes to cast their votes. Like in some precincts, we got more than one place to vote. I know there's 2 precincts here where it's spread out to multiple areas. Just in the event that it comes time to that point, to designate additional polling places, have you already designated locations for that case?
We have looked at areas where we would open polling places, but that would be the board that would have the final say so.
Okay.
But polling places have been identified.
Thank you very much. Those are pretty much the questions I have for this time being. If there's any further that I probably forgot to ask, I'll raise my hand again. But for now, I yield, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairman LJ. At this time, I recognize Chairman Ivan Blanco.
Thank you very much, Floor. Just real quick questions to our CEC, our partners. We're still on schedule with our machines. Is that correct? Yeah. All right.
Yes, we are.
Okay. Second question is, what was the number of days after the election that CEC collects the ballots or accepts the ballots? I know Rep. Tina Sablan's amendment includes 14 days.
Mm-hmm.
What was the previous?
It was just the day of election.
So if any absentee came in late, then they're not counted?
They weren't counted.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, Flor.
Thank you, Chairman Ivan Blanco. I recognize the Vice Speaker.
Thank you, Chairman. Very briefly, referring to page 10, line 3, and this is a section that applies to mitigate the threat and the risk of the COVID-19, the spread of the COVID-19 pandemic. I would like to ask on line 3, or starting with line 2 of page 10, and I read, during the 2020 Sinamay general election, provided that the commission, its staff, and poll workers shall all wear face masks and personal protective equipment during the general election. Now, I understand that face mask is pretty much required, but I wanted to ask, and these are for the staff and poll workers, what are these personal protective equipment that the staff and the poll workers will be wearing during the election day?
They'll be wearing the mask, the face shield, and their gloves.
And is that in accordance with the COVID-19 task force recommendations? Yes or no?
Yes.
Yes, okay, thank you very much. Chair Ayu.
Thank you, Vice Speaker. Any member? Recognize Chairwoman Johnny Martita.
Thank you, Flor. Just a quick question on line 6. Can you expound or clarify on page 6, line 11, the date and time of receipt shall be noted on each return envelope? Is that, are you talking about the postmark or the date and time of receipt? Because at times, sometimes the time is not, does not reflected on the envelopes. Is that what? Can you clarify this? Page 6, line 11, number 3.
Yes, the post office used to put their stamps there. If they run it through the meter.
Please on your mic, Director, please. Can you please on your mic?
The date and time received will be on our end. When we receive the ballot itself, the date and the time.
So it's going to be dated and time from the
When we
board of the commission. Okay. All right, just to clarify that, because whether it's from the post office or from you, so if, and how do you do that when you receive from the post office? Is that another step that you, the Board of Election would do?
Yes.
Yes. So there'll be 2
Because
stamps, one from
yes.
the post office and one is from your office. Okay, so clarified. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. Recognize Representative Tina Sablan.
Yeah, thank you. I wanted to draw your attention, OPA and CEC, to other parts of the amendments that we did discuss. It just occurred to me that we only mentioned having an observer from the Office of the Public Auditor in subsection A1 when it comes to collecting and processing the absentee ballots, to go to pick them up from the post office and then to process them. But then when it comes to actually reviewing, that is part of the process. Okay, so it would not be necessary to specify, like in subsection 4, 2 designees of the commission accompanied by an observer from the Office of the Public Auditor. That OPA would also be involved in observing that part of the process. You don't see that as necessary? Because we only talk about it in that one subsection on page 5, having OPA present. And then also having OPA present for the verification of discrepancies on page 7. So the signatures of 2 designees of the commission. Well, okay, maybe not. Okay. No, you don't think it's necessary?
No, I think subsection 4 is the process that is referred to in subsection 1. Like, when it says collect and process, 4 is what the process is. Like,
Okay.
that's how you process them.
Okay. But what about reviewing for rejection? That is also part of the process, because that comes in subsection B and C. OPA will be part of that process? Or will be observing that process?
Observing, yeah.
Right. Okay. So no changes are necessary. Thank you. I yield.
Thank you, Rep. Tina. Next is Rep. Joel Camacho.
Thank you, Mr. Flor. Just a quick question. So the election becomes official on November 17th, right? That is the actual date. 14 days after the general election.
Does anyone from CC? Assistant Attorney General, please respond.
Sure. So It wouldn't necessarily be the 17th with the 14 days. What we'd have to do is on the 3rd, once all the ballots are counted and tabulated, you would look to see how many outstanding absentee ballots you still had to receive. And if there's no race that's within that margin, then you could call those elections. But if there's still absentee ballots that outnumber what the spread is between any race, then you would need to wait on those additional absentee ballots to see what happens.
So what happens to an absentee ballot that was mailed out on, say, November 4th? Does that get counted when it's received here?
No, because it would have to be postmarked by the 3rd for the date. It says postmarked on the date of election and received within 14 days.
Okay, so technically you can have the election be official anytime within the 14-day period if the tabulations and
Theoretically, yes, if the number of outstanding absentee ballots didn't equal the amount of any amount of margin within a race.
Thank you. Yeah, that makes sense. Thank you. Thank you, Flora. You.
Thank you, Chairman Camacho. Recognize Representative Magloria.
Thank you, Flora. Just a quick question. So, in previous elections, they kept the ballots at the post office until election day, but with this legislation, does this mean that every day before, 7 days before election and 14 days after, you'll be heading down to pick it up every day?
Not every day, but at least.
But you make several trips within that 21-day span? Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Representative Magloria. Any member? Recognize Representative Benavente.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to ask the Board of Election if you say, I heard earlier that the 14 days posted on the election day, right? The election day is posted on that specific election day. Posted 14 days after that. That will be the terminating date for the ballot to be counted, right?
No.
It should be counted.
No, so it'd have to be postmarked by the election day.
Postmarked, I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
and then received within 14.
Yes.
But yes, that would be determinative.
Okay. So prior to that, I'd like to ask the election commission or the election board. So what timeline do they use prior of sending it? When do they send out the ballot to the recipient? How many days prior to the election day?
We try to send. We'll try to send the ballots out by mid-September, end of September.
That is an ample amount of time for them to receive the ballot. Although, just recently, and all of us are listening to the news, the post office situations now in the States is very, very sensitive right now with a lot of the mailbox been taken away from, on all areas of the United States right now. So I guess our recipients, a lot of our people are scattered all around too. So that's something to be considered, but that's out of our jurisdiction and our hands. But the reason why, my main reason is really to know the timeline between the post date election period on that specific day. When do you send out the ballot? And then 14 days after that, then you put it together, you should have enough time for an individual to get the ballot back to the election commission or election, the Board of Election. Mr. Chairman, thank you. That's it.
Thank you, Representative Benavente. Any other member? Just a quick question from me on page 10, line 5, with the commission shall extensively educate and train its staff and poll workers for this year's 2020 Sinamay general election. What is the normal time frame prior to election day where you CEC trains or gives orientation for those assigned poll workers from various political parties? Director?
Well, we try to do our trainings early, but we're waiting for the parties to give us the names so we can start on with the process. But sometimes they delay the turning in of the names. So that's the reason why we usually have it towards the end of close to the election day when we do our trainings.
Isn't it that there is a deadline for political parties to submit poll workers?
We do give them deadlines, but then, they keep telling us that extending it until we're running out of time.
I think, Director, we should try to make some emphasis there. I think there's a really need for proper time for training so that we can assure our voters out there a smooth process of this election. This coming election, I humbly ask that you address that with your commission board and emphasize that if you don't provide your poll workers, that you lose out. I mean, there's got to be we need to provide training.
Yes, we do.
So that we don't rush things on election day. It's a very serious matter. Thank you. Any further questions from any of the members? Representative Tina Sabang.
Thank you, Mr. Floor Leader. If there are no other questions from the members, I would like to ask that we keep our guests here and stay in committee of the whole while we review the proposed changes in the House substitute. So if other questions come up, they can be available to answer
and please proceed and guide us from the title all the way down.
Okay, thank you. So members, if you could please pull your House substitute version. We can start on page 1. So there are a couple of main amendments that were made that are being proposed here, and one is to adjust the early voting periods for Saipan and the Northern Islands and for Rhoda and Tinian. And then the second is to also, one, clarify that OPA will play a process observation role in the collection and processing of absentee ballots, and also to extend the collection period for absentee ballots to up to 14 days after the day of the election. So starting on page 1, we just changed the title, and you can see that underlined, to authorize the CEC to collect absentee ballots 7 days before the general election and 14 days after. There are no changes made on page 2 or page 3. And then on page 4, we just corrected a typo on line 2, inserted the word "the," and then section 2. So we took the actual language that's in our current election law from and that particular section, 1 CMC section 6222, that pertains to early voting. And what we did was we're not using the notwithstanding clause because there were some concerns about that creating confusion. And we're instead just making it clear that we are suspending 1 CMC section 6222 that has to do with early voting, and then including both the Senate's language as well as the language that's in that existing section that does not actually need to be changed. And so the main change that's being made in terms of early voting has to do with the period that's allowed. So if you can go on to page 5. For Saipan and the Northern Islands, the period for early voting by personal appearance would begin the 21st day preceding the day of the election and would extend through the last day before election day. Currently, the law provides for 45 days, 45 or 46? 46 days for the Northern Islands, and the Election Commission has requested that we just shorten that time period. And the reason why they would need, more days than the current 7 days, which is standard in the existing law, is because of logistical issues, getting the vote, getting people up there to collect those votes. But and then for Rhodantinian, because of the relatively smaller populations of registered voters there, OPA has expressed concern about the strain on their own resources and staff to have to send people out there for 21 days, and that 7 days should suffice for early voting. Are there any questions about that? Anything else that OPA or CEC would like to add to that? Okay. And then the next change on page 5. So we are amending the collection and the counting of absentee ballots. 1 CMC section 6213 titled Absentee Voting, Counting Ballots. That section is suspended, again, just for this 2020 general election. And we could, so would it be necessary to include the same language in accordance with the suspension of 1 CMC section 6213? Legal counsel? Does it matter? It doesn't matter, okay. So the following provisions would apply. To be eligible to be counted, an absentee ballot shall be postmarked by the day of the 2020 CNMI general election and received by the commission not later than 14 days after the date of the election. The rest of this language is already in the current law. And so we just made changes to allow for, going on to page 6.
Mr. Speaker, a point of clarification.
Yes.
Please state your point.
Thank you. Is there a way maybe we can insert the language on page 5, lines 18 and 19, just to be more specific, because it says postmarked by the day of the 2020 CNMI general election. Maybe we can just add November 3rd into there, just so that we're very specific, because I know not everybody's, yeah.
Go ahead, Ash.
Well, November 3rd here is different, so then it's actually a day earlier in the States.
So it would be the 2nd, right?
Yeah, so it would be a day later. So like if people are November 3rd in the States, then it would technically be November 4th here. I mean, just something to think about. I don't know if you care.
So is that why we didn't have any dates in the first place?
I mean, I'm just saying.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's the main reason of the original intent of previous or the existing statute. Was they couldn't put a specific date because of the time difference, isn't it? So if you post date, let's say out of California, November 3rd, and a commissioner here decides, well, it's not November 3rd in the CNMI, and they debate over that, and then they disqualify that voter's ballot, that's not fair for the voter, because they met the date.
So what would be a better option than to be precise?
Well, I think that, I mean,
I think
the day of our election is already established,
Yes.
right, by law. And just to avoid the confusion, because we're dealing with absentee ballots and time difference and so on, I mean, I think it would be fine to just keep it as it is. And then we don't have to.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Just point of clarification, Mr. Speaker and
Please.
Rep. Sablan.
Says, what happens, it says, to be eligible to be counted, an absentee ballot shall be postmarked by the day. What happens to those absentee ballots that are postmarked before the day?
Would they be counted as well, or do we need to put in before? Or is that, we're just assuming that they're counted? Correct.
As long as it's by the day, yeah. So
Okay.
even before, if it's postmarked before, then they would be counted.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. So moving on to page 6. So line 1 clarifies that the 2 people designated by the Election Commission shall be accompanied by an observer from the Office of the Public Auditor. It also allows the CEC to begin collecting and processing absentee ballots beginning on the 7th day before the election and ending on the 14th day after the election. The rest of the language is actually the same. Even the underline part there. I think if I may, also ask for the members' indulgence. I think we need to work out just some of the underlining and formatting parts of this bill before we. I know it's a substitute, so I think it just needs to be cleaned up a little bit more before we send it to the Senate. But number 3, the date and time of receipt shall be noted on each return envelope. And then the other change that's happening in number 4 is that 2 designees of the commission, rather than what the current law says, which is that 5 commissioners have to do this work of comparing signatures and so on, we're allowing the 2 designees of the commission to do that work of comparing signatures on the application for the absentee ballot with the signatures on the affidavit and the registration. So that's the change that's happening in that section. Anything?
Rep. Tina, and that's with with OPA observing that specific section.
And yeah, that was the question I was asking earlier. So yeah, OPA will also be part of this process, observing it. Right, OPA? Okay, all right, thank you. And then
Speaker privilege, sorry.
Please state your privilege.
I'm just wondering if Rep. Lipon's concern was addressed. Was that, I don't know if we heard an answer regarding that. With regards to like the mutilation of a ballot, I mean, how would we know if it's tampered or not? Just to see if we address that.
yeah, and just really quickly, that part of the election law is actually we're not changing this at all. This is actually already in the election law. And so I guess I would leave it to the CEC people to explain how they determine whether a ballot has been tampered with. But that's not something that we're proposing to change right now in this bill.
Yeah, Chairman Joel, just so you know, a lot of the underlined sections in this bill, it's actually from the existing statute. We're just showing the members what's being added onto the Senate's legislation. So rather than have confusion of different minds trying to determine which statute supersedes the other, we're taking those specific statutes existing and just fixing them up for this specific election.
That's right.
So pretty much CEC's dealt with this in the past.
Yes, very much. Sorry, Rep. Tina, please.
Okay, thank you. So the next thing on page 7, so basically wherever our current election law requires 5 commissioners to come together to do this processing of absentee ballots, we're changing that to allow for 2 designees of the commission who would be observed by OPA to do that work. So that appears again on line 15, page 7. But I think I just noticed that there is a typo.
Rep. Tina, can you
yes?
hang on a sec? I think Rep. Marco had a question with your amendment.
Oh, sure.
Oh, just a quick question to the
Sure.
commissions. So you're looking at 2 signatures instead of 2 board members instead of 5, right?
Or designees of
Or
the commission. So
designees.
it could be Ms. Julita and Ms. Kayla here. They could do this work of reviewing the signatures, verifying, and
I mean, we're
processing the ballot.
So to the commission, we're looking at a job that you're being paid to do whether it's a month or 21 days before election, compared to instead of working like 2 years. What's so difficult for having 5? Actually look at it daily. Instead of that 2 that you're amending, the amendment that we're looking at, just for the commissioner or for CEC.
Oh, so the question is, like, why are we changing the current requirement of 5 commissioners doing this work to 2 designees of the commission?
Maybe I can assist with that, Chairman.
Maybe you can redirect that.
Right now, the challenge right now is they only have a quorum, right? For example, they're
have
still
4.
missing two members, right? Rhoda and Saipan. So, and getting them actually all in the same place at the same time is their challenge right now. I mean, if the COVID, let's say everything goes crazy and there's a second wave of COVID just hits the cinema, that's why we acted on the previous view of allowing them to meet via telecon or video, but the physical person being there physically is a challenge. Should we get to a second wave? I'm just trying to be playing the devil's advocate here, so that they're not going to be able to sign off on, let's say, an absentee ballot that came in from Oregon, and there's 500 absentee ballots there. Not all 5 of them are present. They can actually designate their office staff or other commissioners that are present on island.
But aren't they
Receiving-
obligated to be there?
They will
I
be
understand,
obli-
I understand that, but
Yeah, they will be obligated. Unfortunately, this legislation is kind of trying to prepare it should we have to get to that point.
yeah, I just wanted to get clarity on that. So it's not that I'm holding off on this, but just to
Well,
have a really clear understanding of why
Yeah.
there's not the possibility. I mean, now we're talking about Tinan and Rhoda, so that cleared it up.
Yeah, I
for the
think
most
as
part.
the speaker said, like for the actual work of physically inspecting the ballots, it will be a challenge for this commission and under COVID conditions to have everybody together. And if you don't have 5 commissioners that are able to physically be there and inspect the ballots, then we can't move forward. Even the staff can't move forward with processing. So that's why, and it's again really just for this election under these circumstances.
And maybe to continue that, that's just to clear the absentee ballots, no? So when they come in, there's 2 of them that can sign off and say this is good. It's actually when they get to the final portion, that's when everybody makes the final decision over there. It's rather than having all 5 for every single piece like we've had in the past where they collect everything on election day and all 5 of them have to sit and clear the first envelope to get the second envelope into a pile that's good and a pile that's bad. It's just having 2 individuals taking care of that, and then when they get the final tally of the ballots itself, then the commissioners are there to certify those specific ballots. That's just, it's the first envelope that the 2 members and OPA to observe.
Okay, thanks for that clarification. Ayud.
Okay, thank you.
Please proceed.
So on page 7, line 15,
Sorry, Reptina, my apologies. Council had a point to bring up when
Sure.
you're.
It's really, this is sort of like along the lines of a technical, but Rep. Ivan's point with respect to page 5, line 18, just regular English language, the word by would normally be fine, which is why we just kept it as by. But just upon further review, I've consulted with the 2 attorneys, and we've agreed to come to a consensus and change the language to on or before.
Okay.
So it'd be postmarked on or before the day of the 2020 general election, taking out the word by.
Sure. Okay, thank you. I'm okay with that. Is everybody else okay with that? Okay. Thank you, Council and Chairman Blanco. And then also, I think this is another kind of technical correction, but on page 7, line 15, that should read, the signatures of 2 designees of the commission constitute a verification of the discrepancy. Is that correct? Page 7, line 15. So I was just looking back at the existing language, and it's the signatures of that constitute the verification of discrepancies on ballots that would be rejected. And so I just wanted to suggest that we include that language so that it would read, the signatures of 2 designees of the commission constitute a verification of the discrepancy noted as the cause for rejection. Does that make sense? Yeah. It's not the designees themselves, but their signatures. Is that okay?
Here, I have to look at it. Should it be signet, because I don't have a hard copy, so.
Here, we can give you a hard copy. And
Should it be signatures or initials? That's the other thing that I was looking at, because like, it looks like, in A4, section 3A4, they just initial the 2 designees, and then is this different? So,
okay. So, right now in section 6213, it's 5 signatures of the commission members constitute a verification of the discrepancy. So we took out the requirement of 5 signatures, and we're just saying 2 signatures of the 2 designees of the commission. Yeah. Is that fine? Okay. All right, almost there, colleagues. And then the rest of the language in that section is actually already in the law. We didn't change anything there. For curbside voting, this is in section 4, on page 9. The only change that's being made is to strike out on lines 1 and 2 or a voter registration roster, because it's the CEC's practice to not allow the voter registration roster to leave the polling place. So the voter just has to sign an early voting application, and that's it. And then the only other change from the Senate bill is on page 10. So just to be absolutely clear, and this is also modeled on the sunset provision in Public Law 1970, the last time we extended the absentee voting period, there was a sunset provision, and what we're saying is that all of these provisions for COVID-19 shall automatically expire on November 18, 2020, which is on the 15th day after the date of the election, or after the certification of the 2020 general election results, whichever is later. Any questions, comments about that? And that's the last change.
Any questions from the members before we rise back and release our folks from CEC and OPA? Just one quick question, Director Gomez. Has your office already ordered ballots for this year's election?
Yes, we did.
And when are you expecting the ballots?
We expect the ballots to be here September 14th.
September 14th. Thank you. Thank you for that response. Any further members? Oh, Chairman Lipon, recognized.
Thank you, Floor Leader. So we have assurance that the ballot is going to be here September 14th?
That's what we asked the vendor for, to have the ballots here at least the 14th.
Is it coming in through mail or freight forwarders or what?
Air freight.
Because next week is the commencement of Northern Ireland voting, September 19th. So the timeline there, because we were trying to do fairness in this, and I'm looking at your calendar here.
Yeah.
This is September 19.
Yeah, but if we adopt this, that's one of the changes that we're proposing, is to allow early voting for Saipan and the Northern Islands to begin at 21 days before the election.
So this candidate, the information will be amended because it's confusing. I'm looking at this candidate information, and this is still in the works, and knowing when would the Senate act on this, that's the question. And if the Senate says we don't want this kind of changes, what's the guarantee that this is going to happen? That's what I'm alluding to. I just want to make sure that when we do this amendment, our colleagues from the Senate would not do a 360 overhaul again on the bill. I just want to make certain that this is meeting those timeline altogether.
And if I may, Mr. Chairman, we did reach out to the Senate President and the author of the bill and a few of the other senators as well, and they were fine with the proposed amendments. And and of course we should go over there and make sure that they know that these are amendments that we worked on with the CEC and OPA and the AG's office. And so, but I mean, as the feedback that we got is that they're okay with the amendments and they'll be ready to accept them.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'll yield for this time.
Thank you, Rep. Lipon. Any further members for this questionings and answers from our folks from CEC and OPA? Ready? With that, I thank you, Ashley, Assistant Attorney General, and folks from CEC. And this time, I make a motion that we rise back to our preliminary session. So moved.
Thank you, Floor Leader. Motion has been placed by our Floor Leader to rise back to the preliminary session and has been seconded. Discussion on that motion. All those in favor, please say aye. Those opposed, please say nay. Motion carries. Thank you, CEC, Mr. Glass, Ms. Cost. Thank you, guys. Thank you. And now, Rep. Tina Sablan, you still have the floor.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman and colleagues. So I offer now at this time this House substitute version of Senate Bill 2168, SD2, HS1, with the changes the technical changes that we discussed during our Committee of the Whole session. I so move.
Substitute has been proposed by Rep. Tina Sablan and has been seconded. Discussion on that motion. Ready? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay. Motion carries. Back to the main motion on Senate Bill number 21-68 SD2 HS1. Discussion. Ready? Wow, that was fast. Clerk, please call the roll.
Representative Babauta?
Yes.
Representative Benavente? Representative Blanco?
Yes.
Representative Borja? Representative Komatsu?
Good.
Representative Castro?
I'm good.
Representative De Leon Guerrero?
Good.
Representative Flores?
Yes.
Representative Guerrero?
I'm good.
Representative Itubush?
However.
Representative Lizama?
Yes.
Representative Manglotnia?
Yes.
Representative Maritita? Representative Peter?
Good.
Representative Probst?
Yes.
Representative Christina Sablan?
Yes.
Representative John Paul Sablan?
Again.
Representative Villagomez? Representative Yumo?
Yes.
Representative Maritita? Mr. Speaker?
Yes.
Mr. Speaker, 19 members voted yes and 1 member is absent.
Thank you, Clerk. With 19 members voting yes, Senate Bill number 21-68 SD2 HS1 hereby passes the House. Thank you, members, and that takes care of our bill calendar under miscellaneous business. Floor leader, please.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Under miscellaneous, if I may ask our good chair for Ways and Means, is there any feedback with the budget process in Senate? As we know, we have a couple of days more to go before this fiscal year ends. Can you please expound with the members? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Floor. Right now, at the moment, I do not have any official notice or updates from our partners in the Senate. However, I do note that our days are being numbered till we reach October 1st or at least September 30th midnight. I have respectfully reached out to Mr. Speaker if we can perhaps have a sit down with the President Hokuk, and discuss how to move forward expeditiously on the budget. That's all the updates I have, Floor. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Ivan. I yield, Mr. Speaker. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you, Representative Blanco. Thank you, Floor Leader. I will be following up again with the Senate President and the colleagues there in the Senate to sit down so we can address the budget bill and get it out of the Senate. Hopefully, if we need conference committee, we'll go to conference committee and get it to at the soonest to the governor's desk for his review. Any further under miscellaneous communication? None? Announcements? Rep. Castro, please. Sorry, come on.
Mr. Chairman, thank you, Mr. Speaker. If NR, if we can announce to the members about the public hearing for NR.
Thank you, Vice. But regarding that hearing, we have to wait for the Senate so we can, make a schedule to have a joint committee hearing.
Are we looking at sometime next week? Or?
Yeah, yes, Mr. Speaker, sometimes next week.
This is regarding the land lease extension. Yes, you have to work with the Senate. It has to be a joint hearing because, like again, in the past we've done joint hearings and then a joint session regarding the extension of the land leases. Any further under announcement? Ready? Oh, shoot. Floor for the proper motion, please.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I now move that we adjourn, subject to your call on today's order of business. So move.
Thank you, Floor Leader. A motion for adjournment has been placed by our Floor Leader and has been seconded. Discussion on that motion. Ready? All those in favor, please say aye. Those opposed, please say nay. Motion carries. Thank you, members, and enjoy your afternoon.
1 hour, 10